The Atlanta Braves beat the Washington Nationals on Monday night, but lost Ozzie Albies to injury in the process. Let's talk about it. Yes, welcome on in to Braves Today for Tuesday, September 23rd, your source of news, notes, and updates on your Atlanta Braves. I'm your host, Lindsay Crosby. You can follow me on social media at Crosby Baseball. You can follow the show on X, Braves_Today. We have a Facebook page and an Instagram as well. And you can find all of my written work, bravestoday.com. That's the Braves Today Substack, as this is both a podcast and a newsletter. A lot of stuff I want to get to. Ha-Seong Kim continues to look really good in Atlanta. I'm at the point I want to see the blue box. We're going to talk about what the contract could possibly look like or how far we might be willing to go to sign him. We're going to talk about Charlie Morton being back in Atlanta. That got announced on Monday afternoon, kind of as we predicted when we saw he was DFA'd on Sunday, but I still think the Braves handled this wrong, and I'll explain how. But first, we've got to talk about Ozzie Albies. He leaves Monday night's game in his second at-bat of the third inning with a broken left hamate bone in his hand. Or I guess broken hamate bone in his hand. So real quick, this is not the same injury he had last year. This is the same side. He broke his left wrist last year. So the hamate is, if I understand this correctly, it's one of the little bones kind of in your palm. Okay? It's on the side of your pinky, and it's down, it's below the base of the pinky, if I understand this right. It has a little, kind of like a little hook thing on it, and that is sports where you're gripping things forcefully. That can happen. You can break it there. Ozzie made contact on the swing. It was a foul ball. He fouled it back. He just redirected it. But he wasn't hit by the pitch. It was just the bone broke. Now, Brian Snitker, after the game, said that it wasn't necessarily like it didn't explode or anything. It wasn't catastrophic, right? It wasn't a ton of pain. It was like a pinch and a funny feeling in his hand. They checked him out. They went ahead and pulled him, got the x-ray. He is expected to be gone for the rest of the year. I mean, you've got 5 games left. You're not going to get him back from a broken bone in 5 games. But Brian Snitker was surprisingly nonchalant about it after the game. You know, this is a super common injury for hitters, he said. He's seen guys return within a month from this. Obviously, Ozzie doesn't need to. But between what Snit said, and then even the doctor that I talked to kind of briefly on Monday night, who, to clarify, had not checked out Ozzie personally, had dealt with this before, said, yeah, this is 4 to 6 weeks. You know, maybe it lingers longer. I mean, he probably takes his time with it this winter. But by January, he's in full off-season, no restrictions, ramp up for the season mode, right? Like he's back in his normal off-season routine by January. This shouldn't be too disruptive. And the big takeaway that they kind of had is this shouldn't cause him to have significant lingering effects like he did this season from the broken wrist. Because if you remember, Ozzie's power production in the first half was atrocious. And we chalked that up to, it had to be the wrist, right? And we don't actually know for a fact it was the wrist, but it makes sense. A lot of guys have reported being a little bit weaker with wrist injury. So the first half for Ozzie, 220 batting average, 290 on base, 316 slug. He hit 7 homers in 95 games and 403 plate appearances. 7 home runs. It's a pace of like 10 homers a year, right? Second half, 62 games. He hit 270 with a 328 on base and a 439 slug. 9 home runs in 60 games is a pace of, my math is right in my head, like 25 homers. Like, that's the Ozzie Albies we knew. In the second half, Ozzie was back to being Ozzie. The Ozzie Albies that we know, right? Batting average, again, 270, on pace for 25 homers. Not striking out a ton. He struck out about once every other game. 32 strikeouts in 61 games, 22 walks. Like, good numbers all around for Ozzie, right? And so I don't think there's a lingering concern about his performance from this injury. Obviously, you're still going to have questions about his performance next year because he was not good for 2/3 of the year this year. 3/5 of the year, technically, I guess, because it's a 90 something games. But I don't think this changes the decision on his option. To refresh everybody, next year, or I guess this offseason, you have to decide. It's the first of 2 club options on Ozzie Albies. It's a $7 million salary for 2026 if you pick it up. It's a $4 million buyout if you don't pick it up. So the decision that Atlanta's really making is $3 million. That's what Atlanta's deciding on. And it's increasingly unlikely that they let him walk to save $3 million. Simply because, as I've said multiple times before, $3 million won't get you squat on the free agent market for an actual starter at the position. So they're going to bring him back. But I do now think that finding somebody who can cover second base if Ozzie is feeling the effects of this injury or gets injured again next year. He's had a couple different broken bone things involving his hands and wrists and all of that, foot. He's had some broken bones the last couple of years. If the Braves probably need to prioritize somebody who can cover some of that. And I mean that in lieu of, like I had talked to earlier about go find a starting caliber outfielder that you can rotate DH between them and Baldwin and Acuna and Profar. I think now the bigger priority is find a utility man. Ideally find somebody who can cover second base and center field, right? Willie Castro, I guess, probably makes the most sense from the guys on the market. But I do think that this probably closes the door on bringing back Marcell Ozuna. Because, and AA's talked about this before, to get any quality guy who has options, and by options I mean he can decide where he wants to go. I don't mean sit down to the minors. If he has choices that he can make, it's really hard to get them to come to Atlanta when the playing time's not there. Well, if you don't have a DH, you can promise playing time. You can promise until somebody gets hurt, you can get 5 days of at-bats where we rotate Profar one day, you're in left. We rotate Acuna in DH one day, you're in right. You get 2 days or whatever at DH. Like, you can find we rotate Ozzie. Like, we can find ways to give guys, like to give a guy playing time. I do also think a move that Atlanta should make, I don't know if they will, but a move they should make is talking to the Arizona Fall League folks with Glendale about Nacho Alvarez not just exclusively playing third in Arizona. That was the report we got after it came out that he was selected and he was going down there, was he was going to be playing almost entirely third base. And I think now you're in a position where you really need to not do that, simply because you need to get him reps at second base so that if there is an injury to Ozzie next year and Austin Riley's in the lineup, depending on how that free agency period goes and who you can bring in, he's either the starter or he's the first man up at second base. Eli White's played a little bit of second. Atlanta really has not wanted to use him there other than once or twice last season. So I don't know if that's going to happen. This is being recorded before the team makes the roster move. I would assume that either Brett Wisely, who they claimed off of waivers from the Giants, I assume Brett Wisely is called up to either play second base or cover for Nick Allen while he plays second base, or they put Ozzie straight to the 60-day IL and they can grab somebody like a Jonathan Ornelas, maybe an Ennis Leonard, somebody else, and add them to the roster. Like, I do imagine it's one of those guys. Brett Wisely makes the most sense as somebody who's already on the 40-man roster. Again, we're recording this before that goes out, but I assume that's what it's going to be. And to answer a question that a lot of people had, you can call up Giancarlo Lara as an injury replacement for Ozzie. Now, there are rules about how many pitchers and how many position players you can have. So you have to make another move at the same time. If you have Ozzie go on the IL and you have his official injury replacement be Giancarlo Lara, you still have to make a move to send a pitcher down to make a pitching spot for Lara. And then the corresponding move for that pitcher going down would be whatever position player you brought up, Brett Wisely or whoever. But there's, in the rule where it talks about a guy has to be down for a certain number of days unless he is an injury replacement, there is not a rule that says you can only replace an injured position player with another position player. So Lara got sent down on Monday. You can call him back up on Tuesday because you have an injury, and it doesn't matter that the injury's on the other side of the ball. And I honestly think that's something they should do because they've completely mishandled that situation. We'll talk about that next, right here on Braves Today. But first, today's episode is brought to you by our friends at Delete Me. They make it easy, quick, and safe to remove your personal data online at a time when surveillance and data breaches are common enough to make everyone vulnerable. Because data brokers hoover up everything they can find: name, contact info, social security numbers, home address, info about your family members, and they sell it online. It's a commodity, right? And anybody on the internet can buy these. Oftentimes, it's like in illicit exchanges and things like that, but they sell it. Daily theft can come from that. Phishing attempts can come from that. Harassment can come from that. But now you can protect your privacy with Delete Me. So take control of your data and keep your private life private by signing up for Delete Me now at a special discount for Braves Today listeners. Today, get 20% off your Delete Me plan by texting HIT to 64,000. The only way to get 20% off is to text HIT to 64,000. That's HIT to 64,000. Message and data rates may apply. Welcome back to Braves Today. Lindsay Crosby. We are proudly part of the Believe Podcast Network. We're presented to you by FanDuel. New customers to FanDuel can bet just $5. And if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. So download the app today. Okay, so Charlie Morton is back. The Atlanta blasted him on Saturday in Detroit, right? He had signed with the Orioles in free agency and was traded to the Tigers at the trade deadline. And they obliterated him. And it was so bad that on Sunday, the Tigers designated him for assignment to have his roster spot back. Atlanta tagged him for 6 runs on 5 hits and 2 walks and 1 1/3 innings. He recorded 1 out in the second inning. Pushed his ERA for the season to 5.89, but his ERA with Detroit to 7.09 in 9 starts and 39 innings. So they designated him for assignment on Sunday morning, and then Sunday night just went ahead and released him. Like, they didn't even bother to wait for waivers to run. They just released him. We heard from Brian Snitker, and then the organization confirmed it. The Braves signed him to a deal on Monday. It is a major league deal. He will be in the majors. They went ahead and did the roster move on Monday. So he is on the active roster, but he's not yet reported to the team. He won't report till Tuesday. And so because he hasn't reported, they don't know what his role is going to be. Snit said, we don't know what we're going to do. Are they going to start him? Does he get a start over the weekend? Does he start on Saturday or Sunday or whatever? If he starts on Sunday, that means you probably don't get Chris Sale. Because I think Chris Sale would line up to make one more start to end the year. Maybe you end up using Charlie Morton in relief of Chris Sale. Who knows? Maybe you start him on Saturday. If you start him, you probably end up either skipping Strider or skipping Sale. You can't skip anybody else because of the time, right? You don't have enough time to get any of these guys back to their normal days of rest, unless you wanted to use Morton on like Friday and skip somebody else. But the Braves handled this wrong because the roster move that they made to add Charlie Morton was optioning Giancarlo Lara down to Gwinnett. And Gwinnett's season's over. He's not going to pitch. Their season's over. But this is really frustrating for a couple reasons, I think. The first one that is frustrating is the Braves voluntarily played a man down on Monday. They made the full roster move on Monday. They optioned Lara down to Gwinnett to put Charlie Morton on the roster, even though he hadn't reported yet. And what's really frustrating about that is they called Lara up on Friday. He was in Detroit for all 3 games. He never got into a game. And if he had got into a game, it was going to be his major league debut. To the point where his parents flew in from the Dominican Republic. It was their first ever trip to the United States. They didn't come to Atlanta. They went to Detroit. They sat in Detroit for 3 days and went to some baseball games, and he didn't play. And I'm assuming that they went home. I don't know. Maybe they went back to Atlanta and they're now in Atlanta, wherever he is staying. I don't know. But the point is, Atlanta, even with a 6-run lead going into the 9th inning on Sunday, Atlanta could not find a way to get Giancarlo Lara into the game. And then, rather than give him a chance to pitch in what ended up being a blowout on Monday, instead, they decided to be a man short rather than give him an opportunity to pitch. It's an unforced error. There was no reason that maybe there was. There's no reason that we know of to make the roster move on Monday instead of Tuesday. And this sounds terrible. I don't mean this the way it sounds. What if Charlie Morton gets hit by a bus on Tuesday morning? He's already on the roster. Now you got to put him on the IL and you got to pay him and all of that stuff. Like, why? Why did they go ahead and make the move on Monday instead of just waiting until Morton actually got to the ballpark and reported and was available for a game? This is an unforced error, and the Braves have done this a couple times now. There's a couple ways that they've gotten things wrong, and it's business decisions, it's roster decisions. It's really annoying. Craig Kimbrell. They signed Craig Kimbrell in mid-March. He voluntarily agrees to stay in the minors until he was ready. They kept him down there for 6 weeks. He was in the minor leagues for 6 weeks, and he called. We got the reporting. He called Alex Anthopoulos after I think it was like 3 weeks or whatever and said, "Hey, I'm ready." And they said, "Okay, great." And then they just didn't use him for a couple weeks. When they finally used him, he had pitched like twice in the week for Gwinnett. They fly him all the way across country to San Francisco on like Friday morning. He gets into the game Friday night. He doesn't look great. He puts up a 0, but he doesn't look great. Like, he gets a caught stealing from Sean Murphy. He gets a pick off to work around a walk in a soft single that he gave up. And then on Saturday, they DFA him. 1 scoreless inning and gone on the road. No welcome to the jungle in Atlanta. No taking the mound in Truist Park. Just the 1 road inning, plane ticket out of town. Eddie Rosario. Another situation where, do you remember this whole thing? They're playing the Cincinnati Reds on May 7th. They're down by 1. 2 outs. Michael Harris is on first base. And instead of letting Eli White hit, who at the time was a regular and was one of the better hitters on the team when this happened, like in the 12 games before that day, Eli White was hitting .326. He was 15 of 46. He had 2 homers. He had 10 runs. He had 8 RBI. Like, he was one of the more consistent hitters on the team, and he was starting almost every single day. Matter of fact, he was 1 for 4 with a double in that game. And what did they do? They pinch hit Eddie Rosario. Snit said afterwards, quote, "I thought maybe Eddie could recreate some old magic." But like, they're just getting the simple stuff wrong. There's no reason not to let Giancarlo Lara pitch before you send him down. There's no reason to intentionally be a man down on Monday when you can let him pitch and then option him down, right? There's no reason to force Eddie Rosario into a game when he's barely played this season and he's been awful while he did it, just for him to strike out in 4 pitches, right? There's no reason to call up Craig Kimbrell, use him in 1 inning, DFA him before he ever gets a chance to pitch in Atlanta, and piss off the AAA clubhouse while you're doing it. There's no reason to do it. We got quotes on this. We got quotes from James McCann. And, quote, "That really frustrated me and a lot of the guys in our locker room," the Gwinnett locker room, "were very frustrated with it. It was strange to call him up for a day and DFA him. He's not just a run-of-the-mill reliever who became a journeyman after 2 or 3 years in the big leagues. He's a future Hall of Famer." He's right. Atlanta's just botched these little simple things. And it's not just roster decisions or playing time decisions. Do you remember when they announced the Pennant Park acquisition? It was the same day that they were 0-6 and about to get walked off by the Dodgers to go 0-7 on their season opening road trip. Do you remember the whole controversy about A-list membership prices significantly going a massive jump up in the middle of a losing season? What I don't understand is every single person watching this, listening to this, reading the content over at Braves Today, every single one of us knows Atlanta's not going to be the high bidder on a marquee free agent. They're not. They may be in the ballpark. They're not going to be the high bidder. What Atlanta's banking on, and we have confirmation, like Ha-Seong Kim, AA has directly acknowledged this, is we want to get him in the clubhouse. We feel like our clubhouse, our culture is an asset. The ballpark is an asset. The fan base is an asset. The area is an asset. You can't make that argument that, hey, we are a great place to come play. Your family's going to love it here. You're going to love it here. You're going to love the guys in the room. You're going to love all of that stuff. When you screw up simple things like this, if you're legitimately going to be that team, the team that says, hey, we may not be offering you the most money, but we have a great clubhouse with a lot of dudes who are very talented, who want to win. Everybody in there has bought into the team concept that we're selling. Everybody in there has a financial cap on what they're earning. Nobody's earning 30, 35 million a year. The most anybody in that room is making is 22. We want to pay you 22 to be in that room and do everything that they're doing. You can't do that with one hand and with the other screw up the simple stuff. You can't DFA Craig Kimbrell after 1 appearance without him ever pitching at home. You can't grab the desiccated corpse of Eddie Rosario off waivers and throw him into the 9th inning of a 1-run game. You can't call up Giancarlo Lara, fly his family from the Dominican Republic, and then not put him into a game and then send him down when the guy who's taking his roster spot is not physically in the city yet. This is not hard. And it's the stupidest thing. I should not be talking about this for 10 minutes. It's stupid. But this is what they've done. And you have to understand, if you want to be successful with we're never going to be the high bidder, but we're going to be a great place to play, you have to nail everything else. You have to nail the theme nights. You have to nail how you treat the family. You have to nail the prospect stuff. You have to nail the promotions. You have to nail everything else, and they're not doing it. When we talk about the contracts, though, I'm hoping that they give Ha-Seong Kim one, and honestly, I'm almost at the point of being willing to give him whatever he wants. We'll talk about that next, right here on Braves Today. But first, today's episode is brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5. If your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. In the NFL season, I think this is great. It's quick, easy. It's the best way to add a little more energy to Sundays. If I'm not feeling great about my fantasy team, which I have been decimated by injuries, I can go in there and I can take the opposite side of my fantasy team. If I need these guys to hit the overs to win my matchup, I can take the unders on FanDuel. And either I'm going to win the fantasy matchup or FanDuel is going to cash out for me. So if you're ready to play, download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet. Final segment of Braves today. Lindsay Crosby, I need to calm down a little bit fired up here about the Giancarlo Lara, Charlie Morton thing. But let's talk about Ha-Seong Kim, because he's been everything you could have wanted and more, right? So from an offensive perspective, like you saw on Monday, he picks up another hit. He scores 2 runs because he also walked. He was on twice. He came around to score both times. Now in Atlanta, Ha-Seong Kim has 19 games. He's batting .309 with a .372 on base and a .456 slug. 12 RBI, 14 runs in 19 games. And credit to Nick Allen. Nick Allen got into the game to replace Ozzie. Nick Allen had a hit, and he had like an RBI or 2 and all of that. But Ha-Seong Kim gives you something that you've not had at shortstop since Dansby Swanson, really. So you haven't had it the last couple of years. And despite some people's insistence, it feels more and more and more likely that he is gone in free agency this year. Like that he is not going to take a $16 million player option to come back. We've broken this out on the show before. I'm not doing that again. I'm not going to explain all of the reasons. Suffice to say, it's not just me saying that. Shout out Becky Lynch. Multiple people are saying that. But David O'Brien of The Athletic threw out something the other day where he said the starting point, the minimum starting point, is 3 years and $65 million, which comes out to roughly 21 or so a year. You're probably doing something like a 21, 22, 22 kind of thing to get him for 3 years. Do you do that? Like, what is the most that you're willing to offer? Is a legitimate two-way shortstop, is that worth the Atlanta max of $22 million a year? I think I'm at the point of I'm willing to go to the Atlanta max to try to get 3 seasons. And the risky thing here is when you look at some of the under the hood stuff, like he had a shoulder surgery, his arm strength is not where it's been. Okay. So 2023 and 2024, he was sitting 87, 88 miles an hour on his arm strength. And this year, it is 83.9. So again, he went from 88 last year, which was 74th percentile, to 83.9, which is 47th percentile. So he went from top quartile in baseball to just below average. Now, some caveats on that is, one, the sample size, right? When you think about how many throws that he's made, last year he made 396, and that's what they're pulling from. This year he's made 140. And on arm strength, I think I've talked about this before. They don't take the average of all of your throws. They look at the competitive throws, right? You're playing shortstop, you field a grounder, you got to get it to first to get the guy. That's a competitive throw. You snag a line drive, there's nobody on base, and you just toss it to the second baseman. That's not a competitive throw. They don't use that. They only use, it's like I think it's the hardest 10% of your throws or something like that is what they use. So he's down almost 4 mile an hour from where he was last year. Now, The question is, the farther he gets away from shoulder surgery, how much of that recovers? Part of the reason Ozzie's at second base and not short is he had an injury as an amateur, or as a minor leaguer, I'm sorry, that impacted his arm strength. And so when it came down to him and Dansby, Ozzie was at second and Dansby was at short. And Dansby's not a dude known for his arm. And I think that's kind of the place where you are here too, is Ha-Seong Kim, like he averaged, in 23 when he was playing some third base, he averaged 90 miles an hour on his throws. Like he had the arm strength to play a good third base. Arguably now, he could still do it. There are guys with the arms softer than that, like Alex Bregman, Max Muncy. But you don't have as much versatility down the line in a couple years in the later years of the deal if his arm strength doesn't come back. So, like, are you willing to go $22 million? Are you willing to go? It's probably more than 3 years. Like, I think we have to remember he's 29. So there's two ways that this could work, right? Maybe Boris is cool with a 3-year deal, right? His age 30, 31, 32 seasons, and he hits the free agent market in time to get one more deal, probably at second or third base, before he retires. The flip side is maybe they want to go for the whole shebang right now, and they want to get the long 5-6 year deal. Maybe they just want to get a 1-year deal and give him the option to either pick up a player option for 27 so he's not stuck in a lockout, or there's options here. I think I'm willing to go $22 million. And I know it feels like a lot for Ha-Seong Kim, but I think when you look at the alternatives, both in the free agent market and internally, you're paying for the fact that you don't have other options. I think we've all kind of agreed. I love Nick Allen. I don't think any of us want Nick Allen to be the starter all year next year at shortstop. Still doesn't have a barrel in the year. Every time he's made it into a game, I keep checking. It's right there in the MLB research tool as I'm watching the game. Doesn't have a barrel all year, never mind a home run. So I think I'm willing to go 3 for 22 if we have to go 4 or 5, with the understanding that you'll have the option, if nothing else, to move someone to second base. If you have to move him to second base in a couple years, or have him play an average shortstop in a couple years, I'm okay with that. It's also not my money, right? And so it's easy for us to say, yeah, we can do that. It's different about what is the alternative cost here, right? If you do say, hey, Ha-Seong Kim, we're going to pay him $22 million a year, what does that mean you can't fill in free agency, right? Because money's not unlimited as much as we want it to be. If Atlanta pays Ha-Seong Kim $22 million, does that mean that not only are they not going for the big four, maybe they're doing something like bringing Charlie Morton back on a 1-year deal for $8 million or $5 million? Does it mean they're doing that to reinforce the rotation? Does it mean they're signing a reliever and converting him to the rotation like a Luke Weaver versus getting an established starter who has a history of 150 innings? Does it mean a heavier reliance on prospects to come up and fill spots in your rotation? A Blake Burkhalter, a J.R. Ritchie, and all of that stuff? What's the trade-off here? What can you not address if you pay Ha-Seong Kim full freight? Because I honestly, at this point, again, he's batting .309. It's becoming a consensus around the baseball world. The people who cover this stuff every day and know these things, and he's gone. He's out of here. Or at the very least, he's not picking up the player option. He could still come back. And I'd be fine if they announced that tomorrow. Heck, I'd be fine if you gave him a signing bonus with money from this season. Go ahead and spend some of this money. I'm not saying go over the CBT, but go ahead and spend money this season. Pay him some money out of this year's CBT. Don't go over the limit, but pay him some out of this year's luxury tax to help maybe lower the hit in future seasons. Does Boris let him do that? Can Atlanta negotiate a deal with Boris that doesn't have all of the Boris stuff he wants? Doesn't have the player opt-out, doesn't have the no trade clauses, all that stuff that Atlanta doesn't give out to their guys. I don't know. But I think at this point, I'm willing to do it. The question is, does he take a 2-year deal, 3-year deal, or does he want to go 5-6? I don't know if I want to go 5 or 6 until I know how the shoulder feels. Because if the arm strength never does come back, then you really struggle with how he ages. And the only option you really have is to kick him to second base in the future. Big kind of question there. This has been Braves Today for Tuesday, September 23rd. Do me a favor, listening on audio, leave a 5-star review, Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. If you're watching on YouTube, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell so you know when we drop all of our stuff. Probably not going to be a show on Wednesday. Day game. It starts so early, the show wouldn't have even been up. Would be just be going up as the game starts. Maybe I can try to get another bonus episode in on Thursday to make up for that. But until next time, this has been Braves Today.